welcome to Tibet USA, Mark.
Phuntsok, welcome to Tibet USA.
Happy Saturday.
Yay! The best day of the week.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Saturdays and Tuesdays are my favorite days.
Oh.
I think. Saturdays because the day is all mine. I get to see my family a bit more, my wife a bit more. And Tuesdays because you're done with Mondays. That's the hard day back to work. And Tuesday just feels like you're full of potential. It's full of potential.
I don't know whether I'm getting into superstition or too much in my head. But for me, my experience, my subjective experience, I too have a preference of which day is my best day. Mm-hmm. So for me, I would say Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday is fine. And Wednesday is fine too. I used to think it was Wednesday, but with a lot of experiments, a lot of meditation, a lot of reflection, I found out that Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesday is the best, but Thursday as well. Mm-hmm. And Saturday is fine because I'm doing this wonderful podcast, Tibet USA podcast.
Tibet USA.
What better day than, sitting across Mark here and doing this podcast. And this podcast, if we talk about why we're doing this Tibet USA podcast, and we touched on why we are doing this podcast many times in many episodes. So I'm sure the audiences by now know.
But for the new listeners, and also to kind of clarify a little bit, as we do this podcast, we haven't been doing it more than a year. We started last October, so we've only been doing it about 9 months, 10 months. And as we do it, we learn more about why we're doing it. I think we have an initial reason why we wanted to, which was to kind of sit together and talk about things that we both love and how they intersect: Buddhism, Christianity, culture. But that's just a starting point. So we've been learning as we do it why we're doing it. So I think it's a growth thing. Don't you agree?
I also totally agree. Thank you.
Yes.
And then these are my reflections. I was in my deep reflection. I often question myself, right? I often sit and pause, and in this question, I will return to what truly matters. Am I acting or doing this, or how should I put it? Is this decision nourishing just the surface, or it's really deepening the soul? Or am I acting from gain or from grounded values? Oftentimes people prioritize personal gain over doing what is right or moral principles. So that reveals the lack of depth or integrity. But my intention here doing this podcast, it is just to bridge the East and the West, to bridge the East and West, ancient and the modern. And I'm coming from the Tibet, right? Himalayas.
Yep, and
talk
India.
About these,
yeah.
Sharing these practices like mindfulness and compassion, and you have this very, what you call, contemplative inquiry, asking all these. So it serves both cultural preservation as well as inner transformation. So also I think this Tibet USA podcast offers a sanctuary of truth and reflection, or space for
a sanctuary of truth and reflection.
Yeah,
I think that's a nice way to put it. It's also kind of a safe space where I don't have to understand everything you're talking about. You don't have to understand my point of view, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes it's like, no, we gotta tackle that later because I don't get it, and I'm uncomfortable with that idea that you just threw out there, So, and I think as we are doing this, we're learning that those uncomfortable realizations are actually where the growth is happening. Like for me, I should speak for myself. That's where I find I'm growing more in my understanding of my own faith. And, it's the tough stuff that makes us grow. So
for me, as a Tibetan, this, again, I'm saying this along the line of intention of the Tibet USA. So I would say that this honors the Tibetan spirit, its culture, its language, right? Its faith, its resilience, right? Giving a voice to those whose stories often remain unheard of, right? So this Tibet USA podcast is like a vessel for me. This embodies nonviolent resistance through storytelling, right? Resisting erasure, assimilation, disconnection, not with the anger, but with the clarity, truth, and courage. So this is if we were to do this Tibet USA podcast in Tibet or in somewhere somewhere in China, we would be imprisoned in jail. So.
So, listener, if we mysteriously go off the air and no one hears from us, can we count on you to help us out there?
No, we will face severe punishment if we were to produce or host Tibet USA podcast inside Tibet or anywhere, any region under the Chinese government's control. Especially if the podcast speaks openly about Tibetan identity, culture, or religion. It's seen as in a way, it'll be seen as resisting against the assimilation. Do I make sense?
Yeah.
Especially if you mention His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That's
game over.
That's your
game over.
Game over.
Can I touch on something that you spoke about a minute ago? So Phuntsok is exploring his heart, and he's laying down the manifesto for why he is convinced and so impassioned by our Tibet USA podcast. Laying out his intention for me, for himself, for you, the listener. And one thing that just caught my ear there was it's a space where that it's a nonviolent resistance and nonviolent platform for fighting against the spirit of assimilation and of cultural identity erasure that has happened and is currently happening with and to the Tibetan people. And that story of cultural erasure is kind of how it's the story of America. And it's that I feel like could be a whole season where we could invite guests in who have Native American traditions, and we can talk about what is it like now in 2025 to be one of the 500 or more recognized Native tribes in America, and knowing the history of cultural identity erasure and even probably genocide. I think I'm safe to say that the American government and our way of life and our grab for resources and land has basically created, and I don't know if we've fully apologized for that as an American people, as a initially European people, but that story I think it's a similar story, and I would love to get into that sometime. But just getting to know you a bit has helped me get to know the Tibetan story, and I'm really proud to have a little corner of that with this podcast, and I'm completely a student in that. I have no real knowledge of it other than what I've talked to a few of the Tibetan people that I've met here in Fridley, Minnesota. There's a Tibetan population here, and you're one of them. So
this Tibet USA podcast, this podcast is born, is that right? Born from that longing, that story. So to speak freely, openly, and spiritually, from inside Tibet, we will be will carry heavy penalties. They will label us as separatist or leaking information to foreign forces.
Yeah.
So you and I will be behind the bars.
Well, you will.
I thought we're together too.
Yeah. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it comes down.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to stand with you. We're going to see. Hopefully, never see that. But I'm not going to stop talking together on Tibet USA podcast. It's not going to happen. So
there are a lot of deep thoughts behind what we do here, but this episode is not about that. But I wanted to change the direction of this.
Hold on. We talked last night on the phone. You're like, let's just keep it light tomorrow. Let's just kind of talk. We're gonna kind of just have a nice little welcome back thing.
With the Phuntsok, you can never be light. It's always heavy with Phuntsok. But you visited some interesting countries this last week, huh?
Yeah.
The 2
I
weeks.
Just got back.
It was a heaven to be without hearing anything from Mark.
You know what?
With no text and phone calls. It was heaven. Those who know Mark, they know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This is the line that you threw in the last episode.
You talk about the glare off my forehead too? How's that?
The glare on your forehead is blinding me. Is that what I use that often.
I did. I just got home to Minnesota from a week and a half traveling with my son Johan. He's our 17-year-old third child.
Handsome, good-looking. Yeah.
He's a good kid.
Yeah.
And we went to Iceland, the country of Iceland, for about 3 days. And
how do you spell Iceland?
Iceland, Iceland.
Okay.
So Greenland and Iceland are kind of neighboring.
I used to struggle
countries.
with the Island, with the Iceland.
Yeah.
When I was in third grade or something.
So some spellings of Iceland when we were there were Island, like island. So an island, Island, for people who aren't familiar with English as much, an island is a little chunk of land in the middle of a big body of water, right? Yeah. So island and Iceland are almost identical in how they're spelled. And Iceland is an island. So I was actually talking to Johan about this on our trip. If there was any like root word purpose for Iceland being called Iceland and it was an island, I don't know.
So literally, it was all ice or what?
No, it's.
I never been there.
Okay. Well, it's on the way over to Europe, or if you're going up to the Arctic Circle, you would probably come pretty close to going through Iceland.
So it's Scandinavian countries they call it. Is that? No.
So I learned so much. It isn't actually Scandinavian, but it is Nordic. So they're Nordic countries, which is kind of like the Northern European countries. Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark are some of the Nordic countries.
Not Poland?
not Poland. Poland would be considered maybe Eastern European.
Is there a pole in the land?
Poland is a very close neighbor of Sweden. Is there what?
I said, is there a pole in the land?
Oh, no.
So go ahead.
Yeah. Boy, now I know how you feel because you're making jokes, and
I'm trying to be Mark here. It's a hard role to play.
The world does not need
big
another Mark.
Big shoes to fill in. Yeah.
Look, I got my Birkenstocks on. I was right at home in Sweden.
Oh.
Bunch of tree huggers over there, and I fucking love every one of them. I love that country, Sweden.
I want to go there.
Iceland was amazing. It is not all ice, but it is about probably a quarter of the country, of the island, is like a glacier.
Ooh.
So they have a lot of water there. They have a lot of ice there, but that's sort of up in the mountain.
It's like Tibet.
Yeah, not a big mountain. It's not big and high like the Himalayas.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of more like a plateau that just sort of gets kind of flat on top, and that's all ice. And so it's melting pretty quick. Actually, they're losing their ice. You know, I don't know what they're predicting, but I think it's melting at a rate much quicker than it used to be. So evidence of environmental change, global warming, and that's having a definite impact on their like ecology there, and eventually their tourism, because that's probably their primary income source, like wool and tourism are big for them.
Wow.
But it's a very rugged country, full of extremes. They have volcanoes that are still kind of actively bubbling and erupting.
Ooh.
There's thermal springs, volcanically heated springs and rivers of water that Johan and I actually...
Like Montana?
Yes, but thermal, so hot.
Oh.
Like too hot to touch.
So the
boiling hot.
Montana's springs you can touch?
Montana's... I haven't been to the hot springs in Montana. So
It's pretty hot.
they're similar. Yeah, but we could actually go swimming in them downstream a bit, and
In Montana?
in Iceland.
Oh, okay.
In Iceland,
In the hot water?
yeah,
Ooh.
it's like a sauna, like the health club
Oh.
that we go to, but it's a running stream of water in the middle of kind of these mountains, and depending on how hot you want it, you can go closer to the source, or you can go further down the river when it's kind of blended with other little like rivers and rivulets that flow into it to cool it down. We did that, and that was incredible.
It's tourist, they call it, huh?
Tourism?
No,
What?
there's an English word. No, it's called. It's I don't know. Ice is. I don't know.
Estuary?
It's something like. Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I have to look it up.
About the river?
No, the streams connecting.
Oh, I don't know.
No,
Convergence. I know they converge.
Yeah. It's called. I can look it up.
Like in Minnesota, the Mississippi River and the Minnesota River converge.
Yeah,
It's a convergence.
You keep talking. I'll look it up. But
keep talking.
my English will irritate the Shakespeare in his graveyard, anyways.
Shakespeare's deaf in his grave. He lost that years ago. No, Iceland was amazing, dude. The land of ice and fire, they called it. And
Really?
our Vikings, who we know here in Minnesota as the football team, were named after the Nordic Vikings, the men and some women and children who would travel in their long boats, their Viking boats, from Norway and Sweden and Iceland, and they would be kind of on a conquest of like basically raping and pillaging, building an empire through their fearsome techniques of like, domination. They'd come in and they'd burn down villages and take women and children. They'd take the resources. They were kind of the badasses of the Viking Age, which was, I think, roughly about 500 AD to maybe 1100, like when the Middle Ages began.
Wow.
But Iceland was home to some Vikings and Viking activity. And then, so Johan and I went to Iceland kind of on the way to Sweden, and we landed in Sweden a few days later, and we learned more about the Vikings and more about Swedish culture today and the history of that. So Sweden is a beautiful country. I am partly of Swedish descent, so that was one reason why we decided to go to connect with would have been my maternal grandfather's side of the family who came here from Sweden. He was an Eriksson, and there's a lot of Erikssons in Sweden today still, and Larson and Johnson, like the S-O-N ending is like there was a Lars. And when Lars had a child, a boy, for example, he'd be Lars' son. Lars' son. Eric had children, and when you were a son of Eric, you were an Eric's son.
So John has a son, it will be Johnson?
Yeah.
Then why does somebody female has a name Johnson too?
Females, I don't think there was a feminine form of that word, of that tradition. Well, actually, in Sweden there is, and other parts of Scandinavia, and the Scandinavian countries are Finland, Denmark, and Norway, and maybe, help me out with this, might be those three. There's daughter is an ending name. So there's Goodman's daughter, there's Jan's daughter. There's actually a designer who sells her designed fabrics, and they're very Scandinavian designed fabrics, and her name is Lotta Jan's daughter. And so her relatives would have been someone named Jan's daughter, and they just carry that name forward. So I don't know. I didn't really study into that, but I noticed a ton of people with those kinds of names over there. So are you looking something up about Scandinavian countries?
I was looking for that convergence of river, but I'm stuck with the word. But it's okay. I'll give up.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Off-roading mostly, huh?
No, we stuck to the roads because we didn't have a vehicle. We didn't rent a vehicle there. We rented like a camper, so we slept and cooked food and traveled in our camper for both Iceland and Sweden. Iceland is the place for an off-road vehicle because some of the roads there are just gnarly, tearing up your suspension and your tires, and we were borderline crapping our car out. We would have done very well with like a Jeep or some big. People are coming and going here.
So, must have beautiful mountains and sky, huh?
Yeah.
Did you take a lot of pictures?
A lot of pictures.
Yeah.
A lot of pictures. Sweden is very much like Minnesota in its landscape. It's a northern deciduous forest. So there's a lot of the same trees that we have, pine trees especially. That's coniferous, not deciduous, but there's a lot of pine trees, a lot of maple trees, oak trees, ash trees, birch trees, because it doesn't get quite as hot in Sweden as it does in Minnesota. So birch trees do better in Sweden. A lot of grasses, a lot of farms, a lot of water. It's on the coast of the Baltic Sea.
A lot of, what do you call that?
Fresh water, a lot of fresh water. Yeah.
Do they have a nomadic life?
There are communities that live in the very north third of Sweden that borders the Arctic Circle, and they are called the Sami people, S-A-M-I. They're called Sami, and they are Sweden's native people. So kind of like what we would associate in America with our Inuit native population, the northern Indians like Alaska, Canada, and the Sami people live in the northern part of Sweden, and they've got kind of their own dialect. They live close to the land in the sense that they still subsist mostly on what they have there. They hunt caribou, moose,
Yeah.
elk, a lot of seafood because they're a coastal country.
Who actually, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
this generation, your parents moved here from,
Out of my four, so I have two parents. They've got two parents, so I have four grandparents, say.
they got two parents? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So out of my four grandparents, only one came directly from Europe. That was my dad's dad. He came from Germany. The other three grandparents were first generation or second generation already. So we have to go back to my great-grandparents before we get people that came from Europe. But my great-grandfather or grandmother, I'm not sure, on my mother's side would have come from Sweden. So that's where I get my Swedish. And that name was Eriksson.
How many
So my
generations
mother's
ago
maiden
now?
name. This would be 3, I think. Honestly, I'm pretty sketchy on
the dates.
on like family trees.
Oh.
My wife Freya, which is a Nordic name, Freya.
Oh.
Actually, because her mom was reading Norse mythology when she was pregnant with Freya. So
What is that?
Norse mythology. So like Greek mythology.
Oh.
And Native American origin traditions. There's every group really on Earth has their own kind of origin stories, and I guess they're loosely called mythologies, even though people believe them as factual. Norse mythology is like the Scandinavian, the Nordic mythologies. So how Iceland was made, how Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, they have a lot of gods and goddesses, supernatural beings, giants, trolls.
Cool.
And you know how Ireland has their leprechauns? That's kind of it's an Irish, I guess you'd say, mythology.
Wow.
So that's where the name Freya comes from. It's a Nordic mythology. And so my wife, Freya, is much better at like family lineage than I am. I don't really do very well with it. So we'll have her on the show sometime and she can school us.
Lot of transitions.
Yeah. So my direct line, there is nobody, one grandfather and then 3 of my great-grandparents came from Europe. Germany, Sweden, the Baltics, Russia possibly. So I'm pretty doggone European. But it was great traveling with my son, being off grid, off the socials for the week and a half, driving around, learning the language. I mean, honestly, we didn't even learn the language. Swedish is really hard. It was very hard for me to absorb. But I met a friend there who I know through the music that I make as Low Key Trampoline.
Cool.
Which is, we're using now for our theme music at the beginning of our little Tibet USA podcast, right?
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And a person I've met who's Swedish, Torgny Elgstrand. Shout out, Torg.
Shout out.
Yeah. I got to meet him in Sweden, so we hung out for like a day.
Wow.
It was fabulous, his family, and he showed us his town and extended amazing generosity and a lot of information about Swedish culture and history and politics and daily life being a Swede. It was beautiful, beautiful time. So shout out Torg. Thank you, brother, for taking us in.
Appreciate it. I enjoy the music.
Good.
So when I'm listening to these, you're descendant from all these different, so many generations. You're carrying the sacred thread passed through these generations, right? You keep it alive here, So in the days to come, I wanted to explore that wisdom of those land, Nordic mythology, Greek mythology. It's not fair because I've been explaining about Tibetan mythology. Now I want to hear the other side because, and I feel like, you know what they say, empty vessel makes more sound. I've been talking more and you have more to share, but I didn't get to listen, so
Cool, yeah.
I'll be looking forward to.
Yeah, thank you. Let me study up on that and bring some good ideas in the next couple of podcasts. Be happy to share that stuff with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, with our listeners.
If there is a country, if you were to rate a number, which country you would say you want to visit that again?
So I would honestly tell any American for sure, but anyone in the world should go to Iceland at least once. You have to see this country. It's amazing. It's such the landscape is so harsh and beautiful and varied. The weather is also changes all the time. And it's so far north on the globe, on our Earth, that during summertime, the sun doesn't hardly set at all. It's light all night long.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we went now, is to celebrate that phenomenon in Sweden, because that's also a very northern, latitudinous country. And they celebrate their big midsummer festival. That's the largest communal celebration in Sweden. And it's when they celebrate the longest day of the year, June 21st. And there's a big traditional ceremony they do around the maypole. I can talk more about that.
Wow.
And I've got some great pictures I can post too.
I was imagining about you when you said you're going to go to Iceland,
Yeah.
Scotland, and all these.
Sweden, yeah.
Sweden, sorry.
Yeah.
I keep saying Scotland. I'm imagining when you said Iceland, I'm picturing Tibet and the Himalayas, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful mountains. Because when you said Iceland,
Yeah.
and when I was in Tibet, those beautiful mountains.
Yeah.
And the sky is so beautiful because in Tibet being the highest altitude on the world, I mean on the earth,
Yeah.
the sky seems so low, and in the color, that the clouds like a backdrop color on like YouTube video. There's this different background color backdrops that you can change the image like that. The clouds are beautiful, as if the universe is playing tricks on me, right? Like, oh, look at this. This is your homeland. It's beautiful. I visited my homeland, Tibet, just before I came to United States. That's 17 years ago. And I stayed for over 4 months or 5 months in the land where my mother was born, right? So, you have a question?
No.
Okay. So she grew up there. And I remember when I visited her hometown, and there's no transportation, so just have to walk wherever I want to go. You just literally have to walk. No cell phone, no electronics, but pure, very pure.
Sounds good to me.
And I remember walking beneath the mountains where she once walked. So I just was connecting what it would be back then when she was
a child.
She was was life without cars or any transportation. So she traveled like that to receive sacred Buddhist teachings from great masters in Tibet at the time. So my mother, a young, beautiful, woman full of life and dream, before the Chinese occupation changed everything. Of course, she's no more on this planet. She passed away in exile, India, when I was 16 years old. I believe she was 55 years old then. And so I remember Tibet, still remember the land vividly. The beauty is not just in the mountains or in the sky. It is this, but in the stillness, the aliveness of it all, right? Is you could hear the streams flowing like like ancient prayers. I feel the cool breeze coming or descending from those sacred peaks or mountains. It was beautiful. I remember the moon in the night. I see bright and
Lovely.
patient, rising above the hills, like a silent witness. It was like quiet night there, right?
You're getting all poetic on me, Phuntsok.
No, I mean that land, that peace, it lives in me still. So even far from home, even across the oceans, right? The breath of Tibet, my homeland, still moves within me. So this podcast, Tibet USA podcast, is born from that breath, from memory, from longing, from love. So we're carrying like anyone else, any other culture. This Tibet USA podcast is a platform where we carry these enduring spirit forward through our stories, through our silence or sacred sound, or
I'm just going to jump on that for a minute and say, you asked rating the places I've been, where I would go, where would I go to again? Being in Sweden for the first time just last week felt kind of like being home, partly because the landscape was so familiar to me. It looks very much like northern Minnesota, if anyone listening knows what that looks like. The lake areas in the Boundary Waters especially, even Duluth area. A lot of water. The water is red oftentimes because of the iron that's in the earth. And a lot of green trees, a lot of fields with wheat, grasses. And the rocks that border the lakes are the same rock that is in Sweden and a lot of Scandinavia, Northern Europe, where it's this black, they call it, I think, basalt, Basalt. It's basically like a lava rock that when the continents were breaking up after the Pangea, when all the earth was one and volcanoes and tectonic plate movement was happening, this hot black lava would boil up and create these fissures, these divisions that would eventually be filled by water, and this rock that's left over has a very unique look to it. It's kind of blackish, reddish, sometimes has moss or lichen growing on it. Lichen is like a very, very thin, colorful, like a light green or a red moss almost, but it's not quite as spongy, and it's very fragile. So seeing these rocks and the way the lake looked and the sky and the familiarity of birds singing was making me feel very much at home there. And Swedish culture is very organized. They're a social democratic country. So it's a socialist country like Canada and other socialist countries where you're taxed very highly, but the services are covered by the state. So your hospital bills, healthcare, paid leave when you have children, 18 months of parental leave for both men and women when they have children. Child care is provided for, roads. Also, state services are the large utilities are also all run by the state. So like road, construction, electricity, the energy, everything.
Do they work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, or?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And they usually have 6 to 8 weeks of paid vacation. It's a very family-centric society, a collective society. They do things together for the good of the whole country. Wow. Like that would never work in America, I think. socialism and their kind of care for the entire community as a whole. That was new to me, and that felt really, really good to be around. And people kind of looked like me, which you might say, well, if you're in America and you're white, for example, European, like I am, you're going to see people that are like you, so you're going to feel kind of at home anyway. But there's a different kind of, like, the vibe that people have in Sweden, I could really relate to, because they're kind of, they like to perform at a high level in their work and in their relationships, but they also are really kind of modest about it. They don't like go around waving flags and bragging about how great they are or how great their individual accomplishments are, yet they're very accomplished people. They really like to be recognized for the good work that they do. And I think I just feel kind of at home in that setting.
Beautiful.
So Sweden gets my vote so far of places I've been in the world that I would like to go back to, that I would like to eventually try living in for 3 months.
So the vibrations there resonates with your own, so you feel home of there. That's good. That actually,
I think sometimes that's triggered by landscape, and you've already touched on that with your homeland, Tibet, and the mountains. And then the way people are, the way they behave, or the way they think about things, and what they do, are the other. I think it's those two things that give us those feelings. At least those are the things that have given me those feelings in the past. I really relate to the prairies of western Minnesota and pushing through the Dakotas, North and South Dakota. There's prairie land where it's just very flat. And in its untamed sense, it's just grasses and some trees eventually, different parts of it. But it's very calming, and it speaks to me for some reason. I didn't grow up on the prairie. But something about that landscape is really powerful to me, that makes me feel like I know it somehow. Whether it's I've known it or it just really resonates with me. But I feel like I know that landscape. And Sweden was very similar because it looks very much like Minnesota. And there's also a feeling of being around the people that I recognize too. And it's that vibration of where their heads are at. They love their nature. And they love taking care of each other through their society, through their families. And they're also just kind of like a really, almost very private and modest, like, people, like they don't really maintain eye contact with you if you're like a stranger. They're going to look at you and then kind of look away for a minute. Maybe it's because we were weird looking. Me and my son, we didn't look like them in a way. But I don't know. I felt a kindred,
things happen for a reason, and there is a connection there. It's no accident that you visited those places and you felt and you had those experiences. I like to believe that.
Thank you. Well, it's also a product of the choices I've made. Years ago when I started, in about 2020, when I started making music.
Those are the seeds you sown there.
Yeah, during the pandemic, we were kind of all alone. We couldn't really get together with our bandmates and do gigs and all this and that. So I started making music on my own. I started the musical identity called Low Key Trampoline, and started meeting people on basically Instagram that were also doing the same thing in all parts of the world. And I made, and I still do make, a lot of friends that way. And some of us end up being collaborators on songs. We'll make songs, make music together. And Torgny was one of those people that I met, and we started making music together. And we would just talk about stuff like what his life is like there in Sweden, what mine is like here in America. And Swedes and most of Europe are very engaged in what's happening in America. Like America is kind of in, not the center by any means of their consciousness, but it's the European world is very aware of what America does and what America is and how American culture has influenced so much of the world. And that's just a fact. It's nothing to do with how great America is or whatever. It's just a fact. America is incredibly influential in how we live and how we've lived and what other cultures are getting from that, good and the bad. So Torgny became a friend, and we've developed some business models together where we share a record label, where we put our music out and other people's music out, and we've worked together. And us going to Sweden to meet him is just a product of that kind of thing too, or like call it karma, call it I'm doing what I love to do and I'm not going to compromise that. It's just a natural progression, and there's a reason we probably get along so well.
Cool.
Whether it's in my DNA or just why we were drawn to be friends in the first place. So
yeah, I would love to visit Sweden one day.
You take me to India, I'll take you to Sweden.
I don't need to take you to India. I just take it to Air India and throw you in that Delhi. All the Indians will take care of you.
No, I hope so. I want to see India, by the way. Traveling is something we're talking about in Tibet USA. Guided meditation series are things we're talking about. And dear listener, not to let too much out of the bag, but Phuntsok and I have some very, very interesting and exciting ideas and innovations to our podcast and to the content that we produce, where we are going to be doing some really, really interesting topics and doing them in an interesting way, bring music and meditation and a very focused approach to sharing the uniqueness of what Phuntsok has learned in his meditation and what I've learned in my music. And we're trying to fuse a few ideas together to make a really unique experience that we hope to bring around to other parts of the world eventually. India, a lot of parts of America here, even in the Midwest, and share what we do and what we know, and the uniqueness of Tibet USA with parts of the world in person. So I don't know if that's happening in the next couple of months or years, but I feel like that's something I just let the cat out of the bag there, Phuntsok.
I'm excited. I'm grateful for all these opportunities that I have. Gratefulness is one of those that we often forget. So I'm grateful. When you said India, I'm not Indian, but I was born in India in a small refugee camps, Tibetan refugee camps, because my parents fled Tibet in 1959 because of the Chinese communist regime, occupied Tibet, and that's how I was born in India. So, traveled extensively in Southeast Asia and then moved to United States. Now this is, I think, going 17th year now, and I see you are right. There are so many things that we should be grateful for in America as an American, right? Like you're a musician now, or you're a writer, you're a composer. We are this freely, openly. We do this podcast. So, you and I will be imprisoned for these peaceful cultural expressions if we do this in Tibet.
Yeah.
So we should be great. I'm grateful for that. That I could do this here, and I will do it, right? And I have to carry the voice of those, So this is the platform where we do that, and
yeah, love it. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up here, Phuntsok? I'm scratching my beard right now. For the listener, listen to that. I didn't shave at all on my week and a half, two-week trip, so I'm feeling pretty nappy right now.
I like this platform where we explore these different traditions or ancient wisdom through our unique perspective. And sometimes there is this unexpected turn where we'll spontaneously jump onto some different topics, but this is what we do. We wanted to have this flow organically. I love this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
But I wanted to, we warmly invite everyone out there to listen to Tibet USA, and if it resonates, kindly share this episode with others, please.
Beautiful.
We do love, what do you call those? Subscribers. We do want to subscribe, so we want to reach out to their intention is not to be popular or all of that, but intention is to our intention is pure. We wanted to share this so that we could do that, right? So, but to do that, there should be connection, and we have to be able to reach out there.
Yes, and the flip side of that is, please reach back to us. Give us some comments and your thoughts and your agreements, your disagreements, your insights, your perspectives on our YouTube channel, on our Spotify channel. So we're really curious how we're doing, and if this resonates with you, listener. So wherever you are in the world, we know you're all over the world, and so we want to hear from you. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Thank you for putting up with Phuntsok, because he can be a lot, and trust me, I can be a lot more. So thank you for putting up with me too. And Phuntsok, thank you for being up for this crazy journey. So it's been good so far. Just don't screw it up, okay?
Thank you.
No, I do love you. I thank you for being here and being my friend through this cool exploration of our individual experiences and how they overlap. It's very unique.
So please help share this podcast if you can. Thank you.
Goodbye. See you next time.
See you next time.